Hey, lifers, welcome back to the Live the Life podcast. As always, I am your host, Eric Aroka. Hey, today, do I have a treat for all of you? You're going to love this one. We have none other than the great Jason Hewlett. Now, Jason is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. I mean, big deal. He is also an award-winning entertainer, and if you have not seen him entertain, you need to. I will include links in the description. You definitely don't want to miss those. It's hilarious. He is also author of The Promise to the One. And Jason, have you written anything else?
I've
I
written
would
a few
imagine
books.
you have.
Yeah, I've written a few books, but The Promise to the One is the main one we talk about. So yeah, there it is. It looks like
Excellent.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one. Great
Yeah.
book. And aside from just being, and I say this, I rarely actually say this about anybody, but I will say this about you. Truly one of the great people I have had the opportunity to meet. Um, and Jason, as all of our listeners know, he is the one responsible for the foreword, the best part of the Live the Life You've Always Imagined book. I don't know if you remember that far back to 2016, Jason, but I had reached out to you in an email asking you for a quick little blurb that I could just put in the back of the book, supporting the book. You said, hey, let me read it. I sent over a very, very raw copy of it. You came back and said, I won't give you a blurb for the cover, but if you're okay with it, I will write you a foreword. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what? Like, what's happening right now? So I always tell people, if you buy the book, if for no other reason, then read the foreword, because it's the best foreword I've ever read. So, Jason, thank you. I want to give you an update and let you know we actually gave it a facelift. So we went from this one to this one, basically all the same information, but we kind of catered it a little bit more to a professional audience, where the original is still more more of a young adult type book. So, Jason, thank you so much, and thank you and welcome to the Live the Life podcast.
Well, what a deal. Man, I can't believe how presumptuous I was to say, I'll just write your forward, bro.
Well, you want to know what's funny about this? I still can't believe. I think I had met you maybe twice by that point, because I had just joined National Speakers Association, the Salt Lake City chapter or the Utah chapter, and I'd only been to a couple of meetings, but I'd seen you speak, and just I was always just floored by it. I mean, just always so impressed. And I just thought, you know what? I got nothing to lose, man. I got nothing to lose, everything to gain. So I reached out. I'm sure you didn't even know who I was, but hey, to this day I am ecstatic and completely grateful. When all my friends say, "Well, I have a best-selling book and I have this and I have that," is when I just say, "Yeah, but do you have a foreword written by Jason Hewlett?"
Yeah, you're
My foreword trumps your bestseller because it's by Jason Hewlett. So
yeah, you're so funny. Well, dude, that's just really amazing. And candidly, I have spaced that happened because I honestly have now at this point written so many parts of books, whether it's forwards, introductions, other pieces. It's been a great honor, and I don't know how I got to be so lucky to rub shoulders with people of your caliber. And I remember when I first saw you and met you, you were so kind, generous, well spoken. The live the life concept was awesome, and I was just like, man, I want to learn more from this guy. So I mean, it was the feeling was mutual, and I think it must have been the year they put me in the Hall of Fame that's when that all happened in 2016. So probably that was like it may have felt neat for you to ask me to do something for you, and then I read your book and I was like, well, I want to do something more for you because this is great. So that's probably what happened.
yeah, it's all good stuff, man. Just deeply, deeply appreciate it. But let's talk about The Promise. You wrote the book Promise to the One. Tell me a little bit about how that came to be. How did you think of that concept, and kind of where has that taken you before we really start talking about what the promise to, as leaders, what that means.
Yeah, a lot of people are really curious about the title itself because, if you look at this, and for those that are viewing rather than just listening, you see that the promise to the one is a mountain there. So a lot of people think, oh, this must be him talking about God or something. I think that there is a foundation for what God expects us to discover in our lives, right? But the promise to the one was really the idea of what is your promise to yourself? And so the one is you in this instance. And I wrote this book with the intention of saying that there's a promise that we all make because I believe that everyone is a performer, and I come from a performance background. We can talk more about that, but I believe that every leader is a performer, and every single one of us has different variations on a promise that we can make, whether it's to our customers and clients, which I call the audience, because from the stage, let's say, I talk about the promise to the family, which could be the family at work and the family at home. And then I
Hmm.
actually I use this concept in my speaking on stage where I talk the most about the clients and the audience. I talk less about the family at work and at home, but still a lot of meat there. And then I leave just a little bit for the promise to yourself, because that's a lot for people to take in as they think to themselves, yeah, I keep promises to everybody but myself.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest to keep a promise to us because
Yeah.
if we break a promise to our audience or our customers, they'll not come back. So then we do everything we have to, and essentially sacrificing a lot of our own comforts and or family time and other types of reasons to make it so that we keep a promise to the people we serve and so we keep our job. Then there's the promise to the people we work with, our work family. I mean, if you let them down, then you're the jerk. You're the weak link.
Hmm.
And so we try not to break the promise there. I think we broke the promise the most to the family at home and to ourselves. And so I really lean into that as a profound piece in a very entertaining keynote because it is heavy. It's a heavy topic, but I came to the idea and the concept of a promise when I was working for years on goals. I was hitting my goals, I was achieving many goals. And then there came a time where I was not hitting all of my goals. And I realized, if I missed a goal, I just set another one. But it was the promises that I made and kept that really mattered. And so I came up with this phrase that says, why set a goal when you can make a promise? And that's not to say goals aren't important, because they are. But if you set a goal,
Hmm.
and you miss it, you just set another one. Whereas if you make a promise and break it, that is a one and done. So what are your goals versus your promises? What are your sacred goals that become the promise? Because not everything should be a promise. That would be crazy. So what are the right goals that you create into your real promises? So I like to say that goals are particulars where promises are proclamations. And
Hmm.
within that framework and that mindset, it becomes the pieces of life, the achievements, the essentially the pieces we become. If you look at a goal on a football field, or a soccer field or a basketball court, it's like that's the thing that you score. There is an end zone. There is a finality to the goal being accomplished. Whereas if you make a promise, it's like something you become. It's a characteristic. It becomes the way that we do life. And so the promise to the one in the book talks more about the promises we make to ourselves and that we do our best not to break. And the reason the book's so popular, because it did hit number one in spiritual self-help, which I had no idea it would
Nice.
go that direction. I mean, it's great, right? But I didn't know it would. I thought it was more of a business book, but people classified it as a spiritual self-help where
Spiritual.
it hit number one. And I think that what's interesting about that is the fact that spiritually speaking, not necessarily religiously or whatever, but what is your soul level promise to make sure that you're going to do in this life? And talking about that in the book, I share as many as I could think of promises I broke. And that's why it's a funny book. And that's why it's a
Hmm.
self help. And that's why it's spiritual, because a lot of mine are spiritually based, where I was like doing something I shouldn't have done or made a mistake and broke a promise. And everybody goes, Man, that's so relatable because it's a very vulnerable read. And
Yeah,
that's been
I
a
was just going to say that's what makes it so relatable is we can see or we can read about the promises that you've broken over the years, and we can relate to that and say, "Oh yeah, I may even have broken a similar promise," right? And we can kind of chuckle about it a little bit. But yeah, I've always found it interesting, Jason, and you kind of alluded to it that we go out of our way to keep our promises to so many people that we come in contact with, right? At work, family, what have you. But how often we break our own promises to ourselves, and we don't work feverishly to not break those promises or to keep our promises to ourselves. I've always found that so interesting, as kind of human nature, kind of a thing, that happens as often as it does. And I wish that we could maybe just kind of wind it back a little bit and think, hey, let's start by keeping our own promises to ourselves, because I feel like that helps us to better keep the promises we make to others.
well said. And that's right. The stronger our promises that we keep for ourselves, the better we'll be in our delivery as a leader, as a performer, as somebody who works with others. I believe that when we wake up in the morning and we kept that first promise, whether it was to not hit the snooze button or whether it was to not have a bowl of sugar and cereal and instead maybe keep that promise to, work out and be healthy and that kind of thing. All of those little things add up to where we become essentially the accumulation of all the great promises that we made and kept that day, and then we can serve our people better.
Yeah. Amen. I love that. Good stuff. So how do you see let me see, what is the promise as leader? What does that mean to you, and what does that look like to you, especially as it pertains to leaders you've come across in business, and as you go out and speak and entertain, what does that kind of look like for you?
Well, I like to frame it under the concept of all of us are performers. I started my career in Las Vegas as an Elton John impersonator. So I found out early on that I could sing and I could sound kind of like him. And I got the job as him 25 years ago, where the promise to the audience in this particular instance was that you would come and see a show with impersonators sounding, looking, and acting just like the artists they were doing. And so I was up there singing, "Can you feel the love tonight?" And everybody with their lights are shining and having a good time. And whether the audience was sound asleep or bankrupt or drunk or sad or happy, I had to deliver a promise every single night. And I learned early on that the great performers show up every single time, no matter what the audience gives them in terms of respect or gives them any kind of energy back. And that was really beneficial as a young performer to see that I had to show up every time. And some of the greatest leaders I've ever known are the ones that show up. And even if the audience is not with them, they still give 100%. Even when the team doesn't want to come along with the new idea or the new software, the new implementation of some program they're putting together, the leader still has that optimism, has that vision, creates something so that the team knows, yes, this is the direction we're going. And some of the greatest leaders I've seen have these things that I call signature moves that make them stand out in a sit down world. And so I share this on stage by saying the signature move of an artist on stage is their greatest hit. It's the way they
Mhm.
sing that song. It's the song you came to hear at the concert. And leaders need to know what their signature moves are, and if they don't, then they're going to have a hard time helping others that they lead discover their own signature moves. Now, maybe your audience doesn't know what signature moves is. That's okay. That's what I teach. And I teach them that there is a process to discovering your greatness, to discovering your signature moves. And the best leaders I've seen are the ones that say, "This is what I stand for. This is what I've identified are my great signature traits. This is how I'm going to lead. And I want you to also clarify for yourself what your signature moves are as somebody that we work together, and we make sure that you do what you do the best, rather than me as a leader doing everything and just utilizing others on the team." And so I like to say that your leadership promise is to identify, clarify, and magnify the signature moves of the people you lead. And the ICM process is simply that. To discover your signature moves, you need the ICM process: identify, clarify, magnify. And I take teams through that. I take them through that in my keynotes and in workshops. And it's so fun, man, to watch a group of people that think, maybe when I say, hey, what are your signature moves? What are your hit songs? What makes you unique? And people are like, oh man, I don't know, I mean, if I were to say, tell me what you could improve, most people say, oh, I got 25 things I could write down. But if I say, tell me 10 things that make you awesome, they can hardly write down 5.
Yeah.
So I take them through this process where I say, okay, first we're going to identify what you believe are your gifts, talents, strengths, attributes, and skills. This is chapter 2 of my book. And it's interesting to watch this process because certain leaders have a hard time with it. All they've ever thought about is what they have to improve. And I say, let's lean into what you're great at already, what you believe you are and you identify you are. So I help them actually come up with a list of 100, which sounds really absurd and crazy, but there's a reason. You whittle it down to your top 10 and you say, those are my 10 words I identify that make me who I am. These are my signature moves. I believe they're mine. There are things that can be very simple. Like for me, I identify I'm an artist, I'm a family man, I'm funny, I'm a writer, like really basic stuff, but the accumulation of all of it makes me who I am, in my opinion.
Sure.
Now, then I say, okay, set that identify list off to the side. Now, the rest of the process is ICM. So C stands for clarify. Now we're going to clarify with other people you trust and know and who like you and who work with you. They're going to clarify for you what they see in you. So all you're going to do is ask them, hey, what are my signature moves? What are my talents as a leader? Or what are my talents as a worker in the business? Man, it's crazy what happens when we open up the opportunity to complement each other and to share each other's greatness. So if I were to ask you, Eric, hey, what do you clarify or some for me? And I've already identified that I'm funny, but Eric might say, Jason, I don't think you're funny. I think you're hilarious. And I go, ooh, I think I
That's
like
true.
that word better. Right? So,
Yeah.
but you see in me something I wouldn't identify for myself. You
Yeah.
might give me a better word. So then
Yeah.
I've identified what I think. Now you've clarified what I can now grab onto. Now I can magnify my promise to share those things in every interaction. And I can now choose from that list of things I've come up with from the ICM process that become my signature moves. I've seen leaders that do this, Eric, and it is transformative in their leadership. They've never sat down with their people they work with and said, let me clarify for you some of the greatness you can't even see in yourself and that I see in you. I'm telling you, man, it blows their mind. And they become
Yeah.
so much happier in their work. They become so much more effective. They become the performers that are truly legends in concert.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I kind of went through a very similar journey back in, I would say between 2014, 2016, right before we met, because I had been in sales my entire adult life up to then. Right. And I always kid with people and say, man, I'd been in sales since I was like 8 years old because I was always trying to sell something, to my friends or cousins or whatever, or I was always bartering or trading stuff. And so that's what I'd always done. And I thought, well, that's my identity and that's kind of who I am. And maybe that's just what I'm good at. But I don't feel like that's what one of my signature moves was. I think I just did that because it kind of fell into my lap and I didn't know anything else. And it came so easy for me. Maybe it was a signature move, but no one ever told me that, right? I just felt good about it and I was successful. So I just went with it for years and years. And then I found myself feeling very unfulfilled and very frustrated. So in 2014, I just, said goodbye to sales forever. And that was it. And then I was like, well, now what? Like I'm not good at anything else, right? And so like you just mentioned, I started asking people, well, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Like, what if you had to say 2 things that I'm good at, what would you say that those things are? And 9 times out of 10, I mean, everyone I asked, people would say, you're a really good speaker. You're very funny. Now, if you compare my funniness to your funniness, there's a lot of interpretation there because I think you're very funny, or should we say hilarious? But my humor is just a different style of humor, right? It's a very self-deprecating humor, a little sarcastic, type of humor. So it's just different. But that's what people were saying, and it really got me to thinking. Well, okay, like I don't think I'd ever realized that before. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh my gosh, I think they're right. People would say things like, "Oh, you spoke at church, and I remember this talk that you gave, and it was so uplifting, and it really helped me, whatever." And then I was like, "Oh," and then the lights started to, the light went on, and then I found out about NSA, and I went to my first meeting, and I was like, "Oh, I need to belong here because they're gonna help me perfect my signature move, right?" Um, but today I still take on to the stage whatever it is my stage looks like, whether it's the podcast or an actual stage, training room, whatever it looks like. And I remember the words that you told me in 2016, and I know that you don't remember this, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And you were giving a talk about signature moves, and you said that when the lights come on, or when the lights go on, you have to be prepared to give your A game. And that has just stuck with me ever since. And I remember thinking, well, what if I'm not feeling well? What if I'm sick? Right. And then I had the opportunity to have to go out and perform. And I got there and I was just ill. I mean, I had a fever, I had the whole 9 yards, and I was like, well, do I just call the event coordinator and the event planner and just say, hey, listen, I'm ill. I'm happy to refund you your money. But those words came back. When the lights go on, you give 100%, and that's what you're supposed to do. That was my promise, right? And I've held that. And I got up, I did my bit. I was sick as a dog the rest of the night, but for that bit, that 1 hour period of time, I was not worried about how I was feeling or whether I had a fever or not. I was really just focused on, hey, the lights are on, it's time to shine, it's time to share my signature moves with this audience, right? And that has stuck with me for all of these years. And to this day, when people ask me about speaking or what, I always come back and say, well, hey, you know what? Jason Hewlett told me this, and it has been a great thing to remember as you go out and do this. And I think that's what people need to do when the lights go on, whatever that means in your career. I think we all have to have that approach, right? I mean, if you're a stay-home mom, hey, the lights go on in different different ways, right? The kitchen light goes on, and the living room light goes on, and you got to be ready to perform. You got to be ready to give your signature moves. So I love that you shared that. So thank you very much. It's been a huge help
I love that
over the
story, and I
years.
love that you remembered it and that was helpful. And that is a true thing I still talk about. I just say, look, my promise is to give 100% no matter how I feel, no matter how the commute went, no matter how I slept. I mean,
Yeah.
last year I did an event. I've never shared this story actually, so here's a new one. I had to perform on Halloween in front of 20,000 people at an arena. And it was for a huge event, biggest event I've ever done in my life. And I was a last minute sort of fill in for this group. And I was supposed to do 15 minutes. And, I was ready because I had done things like this before. But they weren't going to introduce me. I was just going to go out on stage and do some warming up of the crowd for the bigger speakers coming to stage, which were very famous people. And Eric, the night before, for some reason, I went to what's considered in our community, it's called for our church, it's called a ward. And so it's like our congregation comes together every year, the day before Halloween, and we have a chili cook-off. And I ate every chili I could find at this at the chili cook-off, and there was one that was particularly good. It was like a Thai something fusion of current chili here to the US and to the Thailand food mixed with chili. Brother, it created, I woke up at about 2 a.m. and my flight was at like, 6:30 in the morning, whatever. I
Oh,
woke up at 2 a.m. with an atomic bomb situation, like not from all angles. And I only share that because I was so sick. I thought I should maybe go to the ER. I was that ruined. I was wrecked. I had never been allergic to anything like beans or chili or anything. Brother, I don't know why I subjected myself to this, knowing the biggest gig of my life was the next day in a
oh,
different city. But I did do that and I was destroyed. I crawled to the airport. I crawled to the airplane. I barely made the flight. I barely got to the city. I was so sick. I had a migraine. I was dying. And then I climbed onto the stage and as I was up there, I did keep the promise. And I did my 15 minutes. And as it started to whittle down from 15 to 10 to 5, they added time. So the main speaker was very late. I ended up doing 47 minutes in front of 20,000 people, and I was winging it while I was as sick as I've ever felt. That's the promise. Nobody knew I was sick
wow.
except for my wife. And I don't know how that happens other than, call it divine intervention. God lifts me up, you name it, whatever you will. For me, that's what it was. But each of us has our moment when the lights go on. We must perform. We must keep that
Yeah,
promise.
yeah. That's a great story, man. Thanks for sharing that with all of our listeners. I often think of like Michael Jordan too in the finals against Utah, right?
The flu game.
What the flu, and he goes off for like 44 or 47 points or something crazy like that, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, wow.
It was not a
I,
flu.
you
He was
know,
poisoned. I remember that
yeah,
story.
he was poisoned.
He
The
was.
hotel staff.
It was a very sad, true, crazy story. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, excellent, man. That was great. So, how do leaders define and uphold their commitments to their teams or organizations?
Well, really, they need to, first of all, define it for themselves. And if they don't show up and bring 100% in every interaction, then their team is not going to follow. And so that's, first of all, the main challenge. So make a promise to yourself and keep it. And then make it to your team and keep it. Expect it of them as well. If they aren't hitting the mark, whether it's on the goals that you set, which are the particulars, they might be the everyday average numbers. And then the promise, which is kind of the overarching piece that everything falls underneath it, then we need to call our people out and say, hey, why did we not hit this? At what point did we break the promise, or why did we not hit our goals? And the challenges we have usually is the expectation is not laid out properly and we don't hold anyone accountable. And so when we do that in a proper way, we'll become greater leaders.
Yeah, I think there's that word accountable, right? Accountable. I love that word. It's been great in my life. Um, yeah, I love the idea that the more we do it and hold ourselves accountable to the promises that we make to our teams and our organizations, then hey, then we have that ability to hold other people accountable for those promises that they make. Um, and I think accountability is a great thing. I don't know why. I I just feel like over the years, I feel like the word accountable has taken like a negative a negative tone. And I've never looked at accountability that way before. I've always thought of it as a very positive thing, right? Because hey, if I'm accountable, that means I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That means I'm executing. That means I'm doing all the right things. And when things go wrong, if I'm accountable, then I gives me the opportunity to fix whatever went wrong. If I'm accountable to my promises, then it allows me to better keep my promises down the line, right? If I hold myself accountable. So I don't know. I think we need to retake a look at that word accountable and make sure that it's more of a positive thing rather than a kind of a negative thing, like something that we dread.
Yeah, well said. I agree. And, accountability is scary. Let's be honest. So is the word promise. People don't like that word. When I first introduced it into the corporate market, let's say, which was around 2016 when I went all in on the promise method and message, people were terrified about that because they were like, what promise can we make? We're a bunch of surgeons. We can't promise anything. We don't know if their person's going to die in our care. You know, and I go, well, that's not to say you're going to make a promise they're going to survive every single surgery. It's the promise that you're going to give your all to do everything you can to help them survive. Like, that's the promise. You can't make a
Exactly.
promise you can't keep. So we're not looking for ridiculous,
Yeah.
nonsensical outcomes. So accountability is scary. Promise
Yeah.
making is scary because we're like, well, I don't know if I can make that promise. Well, then stop being such a wimp. Make the right
Yeah.
promise then. Make the promise that you're going to do everything in your power to make that happen. And then,
Yeah.
and then the chips fall where they may. But yeah, accountability, that's a scary one.
So I've actually seen it in education lately, in a lot of classrooms when I go in and meet with teachers and uh, do a lot of trainings. It's really interesting because they all have like a little poster that they've made up, and it says, some of them say like classroom rules. Lately, I've seen, and I posted it on my LinkedIn, but lately I've seen classroom promises. Huh? Huh? So classroom promises, and then they list them. And I thought it was really nice that, like the teachers have the kids come up and sign their name on it, right? And I was like, okay, that's really cool. But then I'm like, well, that falls short, because if you just put that thing on the wall, and let's say that you're teaching second graders, well, they can't. I mean, half of them can't read or can't read well. So now they've signed their name to this thing, and you've never you've never like brought attention to that agreement or to that promise since they signed it. So how much more powerful is it if we just remind ourselves of the promises that we make to ourselves, or the promises that we make to others, right? Like a while ago, my youngest daughter was in ballet, and it was a big deal, right? She started when she was 3. She went through the ranks. I was in my sales career and I was traveling all the time. And then in my speaking career, she got to the point where she was on point shoes, right? So they're on their tippy toes and, that whole thing. That's a big deal. So she's got a performance. I'm in Korea running workshops in Korea for a big company. And I know I've got to get back because I promised her that I would make it to her first recital when she's dancing on point shoes. I made this promise to her. Well, I get done with my, trainings and everything over in South Korea, and I start making my way back home. And Jason, I gotta tell you, man, if anything could have gone wrong, in my on my way back, I just felt like it went wrong, right? Connecting flights and this, it was such a mess. And I remember getting to Salt Lake City International and finally arriving and getting in my car and thinking, well, I'm going to make it, but I'm just going to miss the entire performance. Like, I'm going to be there when she comes out and she's greeting the parents and, what have you. I'll make it for that piece. Man, I was driving. I won't say how fast I was driving. Well, the statute of limitations is up. I was probably doing 95 on I-15 from Salt Lake City all the way to Utah County, which is probably about close to 50 miles. And I remember getting to the venue. I was even brazen enough to stop and buy flowers at a grocery store. And I made it to the venue, and I walked through the doors just as she is coming out to dance. And I thought, that's the promise. And I got to tell you, that a big deal for me? I mean, yeah, it is a big deal because I'm the dad, and I was proud dad moment or what have you. But the effect of me keeping that promise was not the effect. The great effect wasn't on me. The effect was on my daughter. And I mean, she talks about it to this day, right? I remember that you kept your promise when you said that you would come to my first ballet recital. Now, I made it, I think, to every other ballet recital she ever did as well. But that was those important moments in our children's lives, or what have you, or whether we have employees. Just keep your promise. That's what it's all about. And bringing it back to the kids, in school, I'm telling teachers, well, just remind them what the promise is. And it's really simple. Like, one of the promises was be responsible, be respectful, be ready. Just remind them every day that they made that promise and that you made that promise because you as a teacher signed it.
Mhm.
Just, it's a constant reminder that as an educator, I made a promise to these kids and they're making a promise back to me, right? And that helps to build culture. And I think if we can do more of that, then we'll have healthier cultures in our homes, in the places where we work, places of employment, in our churches, wherever it is we go. I just feel like the culture will be better. And let's face it, with the current events over the last few weeks, I think we need all the positive culture we can get, right? We need more people keeping their promises than not keeping their promises.
Wow.
Long-winded,
That was
long-winded, but I just wanted to share that with you.
incredibly well said. And for the educator and any leader, just exactly what you said. It is about reminding them the promises that they made. And it is the main reason promises are broken is because we forgot that we made them. Even if we
Yeah,
wrote it on our wall.
yeah,
And then, let's say your story would have gone south and sideways. You miss a connecting flight, you miss this whole thing with your daughter. The What I found is because there are going to be people watching this like, well, I missed the dance, because all this other stuff went wrong. I couldn't keep the promise. So am I a bad person? The the promise in that moment would be to over communicate and
hmm,
to let them know, your wife or let somebody know, say, hey, did all I could. The nature wouldn't allow me to be there or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
And just say, hey,
yeah,
I just want you to know I'm thinking of you. I'm so sorry. We'll figure out ways that we can keep the right promise in the future. So
yeah,
hopefully the people are inspired by your powerful story that you did keep the promise and it worked. Other people are going to be sitting there like, well, I break the promise all the time. And so it's like, okay, then can you over communicate and let somebody know, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, I overshot this one. I really apologize. This is how I'm going to make it up to you, and these are the promises I'm going to keep in its place.
yeah, yep. Excellent. Not so powerful, so powerful. And I have to admit, I mean, there's been times when I didn't keep promises, because of not because of me, just because of other circumstances that, things that got in the way, things that I didn't have any control over. I mean, I don't fly the airplane, I don't control the weather. So
Right.
sometimes
And
that happens, but like
just
you said, it's that communication
yeah.
to say, hey, listen, I did everything I could, but so and so is preventing me or whatever from,
Yeah.
from keeping that promise. So
Think about when you're
yeah.
on an airplane. You've been on an airplane that's delayed. I mean, you've been on
Oh
an
yeah.
airplane where you're like, why the heck are we sitting here still?
Yeah.
And we can sit in silence and wonder and think negative things, or the pilot can come on as the leader of the plane and say, well, hello, folks. We apologize for the delay. Here's the problem. And here's how we're going to fix it. Our promise is that we're going to make sure that we're safe before we take off. And so we appreciate you understanding, and hopefully this gets fixed. I mean, then the promise is still kept, even though we're going to be late for our next connection,
Yeah.
right? But the
Yeah.
leader has to say something, must
Yeah.
communicate when something is not going right, or the promise will be broken. And so
Yeah.
that's a major piece.
Yeah, I think that communication piece is huge because I think many times that's what's missing. It's not that the promise was kept or not kept, it's that the communication failure. I mean, it failed. We didn't communicate with people what was going on, what was what the problem, what the issue was. And so now everyone is just sitting there going, well, what are we doing still sitting here? It's been 4 hours. Are you kidding me? It's hot. Can you turn the AC on or anything, right? Crank the engine so that so the hot air at least blows on me. And instead it's just silence, right? And you ask a flight attendant, hey, what's going on? Oh, nothing, right? They don't even tell you because they probably don't even know.
They
That
don't.
is so frustrating. Yeah, just over communicate. And then I think pretty much problem solved if you can just communicate what the issue is and what's going on, why you can't keep that promise to get me to my destination on time. I love it.
Absolutely.
Love
Yep.
it. So have you seen any transformational have you had any transformational moments that that you've been able to witness? I know that you mentioned that when you share this keynote with leaders that you kind of see that transformation, but is there a like an example that you can share with us that you feel comfortable sharing with us and how that happened when a leader kept their promise, how that transformed their life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you can see in the background I have this logo. It's called Cardio Miracle. So this is a company that I work with as a consultant. I came in as a consultant a few years ago, and it's a heart supplement company. So it creates nitric oxide molecule in your body and helps you with cardiovascular health and so forth. In fact, the founder of it is, you can't see it here close up there, but it's my dad. And my dad
Oh,
created
cool.
this product years ago because he needed to have a quadruple bypass. And he instead of going under the knife, he wanted to see if there's a natural way to not have to have a quadruple bypass. And so therapeutically helped himself with this product. And the next thing we know, he never had the quadruple bypass. And it's been 15 years. He's now 73. The reason I share that story is because when I came in to consult within his company, as I was doing this with other companies, teaching them the promise signature moves, I looked at all the people that he had in place, and he had a lot of great people, but it was also like, well, these people are on the bus, but they're in the wrong seat. And so when you actually sit down and teach the ICM process, and I sat down with every person in the company and I said, tell me what your gifts are. What do you think you're good at? And they would tell me. I had one guy in particular, he was like, I'm really great at marketing and at coming up with new strategies to get new customers. And I said, so what do you do in the company? And he goes, oh, I run all the tech. And I was like, all right, why are you running the tech? He's like, because I'm the only one that knows how. And I was like, okay. So I talked to the leadership. I said, can we hire another tech person? They go, oh, we do have one guy, but he's really part-time. I said, how about we give him some extra money and some extra hours and bring him on so that we can move this guy over to here. And Dave, when he finally got to become Mr. Marketing Guy, and he now has created all of these new avenues for us to do marketing and sales opportunities and ideas with pitches, with ideas to get this product flying off the shelves, which it is. It's a killer product, but it's also like it's saving people's lives. And so this guy's a genius. He was just sitting in the wrong seat. And
Yeah.
as a leader, my job was to say, okay, how can we make it so that he's shored up, that he knows he can hand over all the tech stuff to the tech guy that really wants to do it and is great at it. He was good enough at it, but the next guy that he's got is even better. And now he's this marketing guru that we're like, thank goodness he's in this spot. That's a very simple story. And yet that's something that most of us in a small business, we wear so many hats. We're trying to do 10 different things we shouldn't be. It could take me 3 days to fix my printer, or I could hire somebody and take them 10 minutes, right? Hey, there's a thumbs up for that one. And I just
Yeah.
think that unfortunately, so often leaders don't consider the fact that somebody else can do it way quicker. And in other cases, we find the right people in the right place put them in the right seat on the bus, just like it says in Good to Great. Jim Collins wrote about this. So put
Yep.
them in the right seat, find their signature moves, identify, clarify, and magnify, and allow them to go hog wild at being great. And it transforms not only the productivity of the company, but the performance of the person then becomes a leader in and of themselves.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, yeah, because now they're thriving. They are living in their strengths,
Yeah.
right? Now, tech was probably a strength also, but definitely, I mean, he was obviously doing it because like you said, he knew how to do it, but it's not where his signature move was, right? It wasn't the signature move. And then once you move that person over to the signature move, what they're really good at, man, they can thrive and they can just blossom and wonderful things happen when that situation occurs. I
Yeah,
love it.
there's a book that your audience might enjoy. It's called The Big Leap, and it's by Gay Hendricks. And he talks about there's a zone of excellence that we most of the time get caught in. That's not the zone you want to be in. You want to be in the zone of genius. And so few
Right.
people ever get to the zone of genius because they're in the zone of excellence where they're capable and they're doing really well. And that's what was happening in this case. Dave is very capable in his zone of excellence at doing data and IT stuff, but his zone of genius is marketing and creating new ideas and ways to get people interested. So yeah, it's a great book, The Big Leap. Go check it out.
I'll have to go check it out. Thanks for the tip. All right, Jason, this has been incredible, man. I love it. I mean, I could just talk to you for hours. I've always enjoyed our conversations about anything,
Same
and
here.
so I just love it. I love learning from you, and I think all of our listeners will learn a great deal from you. So thank you for sharing. One last question is: what advice would you give emerging leaders about the power of their promise?
The advice I'd give an emerging leader about the power of their promise. Huh. I would say just the importance of making sure that you acknowledge as often as possible the greatness of the people that you lead. Because they are being told way too much that their performance is not enough. They're being told that their goals are not being hit, that the numbers are not where we need them. Continue to be that guy who overpraises, over cheers, over communicates, over gifts the person something that they don't get very often, probably anywhere else anyway. So you become that kind of leader, they'll love you forever.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. Great advice. And they probably don't hear it enough, right? No, not probably. They don't hear it enough. Jason, I was having. I mean, it is so awesome that that you give this advice because yesterday actually I was talking to a second grade teacher, and she was very frustrated. And we just started the school year, Jason, and she's already feeling burnt out, right? And overwhelmed and all these things. And she was on the verge of tears, and she was really trying hard to just not start crying. And I just said to her, I just said, "Listen, you are a great teacher." And she looked at me in like totally surprised, like she had a total surprised look on her face, like, "What, me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you. I've been in your classroom. I've seen you teach. I've seen how gifted you are, how talented you are. I see how much your kids love you. You are a great teacher, right?" And as she almost and she was like, just like, "I'm not gonna cry." And she said to me, "I have never heard that before."
Ugh.
And I was like, "What?" I mean, I will tell you from here on out every time I see you how great you are. Right? So I think you're right. Great advice. Thank you so much. I think our audience will absolutely love that advice. And I know I will and take it to heart. So thank you. Well, everybody, that brings us to a close to yet another episode. And wow, what a fantastic time it was with the great Jason Hewlett. Never disappoints. When the lights come on, he delivers. He keeps his promise. Remember, lifers, as you go out and keep your promise, it'll help you live the life.